OMG, it's that little bit before the podcast where I ramble a bit. And today's Coworking Values podcast is Ashley Proctor, the keeper of Coworking Canada and the creator of the blueprint. And in today's episode, we talk, it's based around the blog post, which I'm sure a lot of you read, about 20 years in co-working, and we dig into sections of that blog post. And one of the things we talk about is community land trusts, and there's links to other projects that link out of that original blog post on LinkedIn. But there's lots of different business models and ideas around how to create community and attract community that are tried and tested and might not have worked 14 years ago, but now they are working just because of the way the world is. And also there's a link in the show notes to the Unreasonable Connection event, which is our online event, which is an hour of co-working community builders getting together and just talking to each other. It's as simple as that. No sponsors, pitches, or, airplanes in the sky with tailors behind them and adverts on. It's just co-working community builders talking together. And as always, and we're going to be doing all the time from now on, we're going to post this in the co-working LinkedIn group. There's a link to that in the show notes, and you can carry on the conversation. And when you listen to this episode, if you hear of other co-working spaces or if you think of other co-working spaces or projects that would be interesting to share that are applicable to the content of this podcast, drop them in the comments below this post on LinkedIn. And I think that's it. So wherever you are, let's get into the show. Hi, folks, and welcome to another Co-working Values podcast. And in the studio today, back for the 700th time, and very welcome to, is Ashley Proctor. So in this episode, Ashley, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
I have been running co-working communities for the past 20 years or more, and I would like to be known for building communities of care.
I think you're doing really well. We're going to leave a cliffhanger here, folks. We're going to have to do a whole episode. Is it community land trusts?
Yes.
Yes, we'll put a link in the show notes to the Kensington Market project, and which we talked about when you were in London, but that's come on a long way. And that is the thing of its time. So you did this. Why I pulled you in here today? Because one, I like podcasting with you and chatting with you, but you did this 20 years in co-working post on LinkedIn, which we will link in the show notes. So we've been at this a long time, and when you think about those early days, Ashley, what pops in your mind when people say, "How long have you been doing this?" and you're like, "Oh, that's my first memory of co-working." What is it?
I think my first memory of co-working is really just having a group of friends and peers be working in a space together and sort of feeling this vibe. It was like an intuition or it's a very emotional experience of just like, wow, we all belong here. We're in the right place and we're doing something really special. I remember a feeling of like this connectivity and camaraderie and positivity that I hadn't really experienced in any other public space.
And there's this bit in the post, which I'm going to hack the question. Like you said, we weren't serving a problem, because if someone sets up a co-working space today, they come to people like you and I and say, we need to do this. And you have this 10-point plan and strategy and outreach program. Like, what were you doing back then?
Yeah, I mean, we were solving a problem for peers and for young entrepreneurs, for emerging artists. I was a student at the Ontario College of Art and Design, and we were losing all of our collaborative space. And we were just trying to hold space for those students off campus so that they could have that connected experience that they thought they were going to get when they were coming to university, college. But they weren't, because of the renovation project. We were being disconnected and distributed instead of coming together for our learning and critiquing and collaborating experiences. So we just created space where we could do what we came together to do in the first place. And that became a very productive and healthy and thriving work environment and beyond. The social connections are still lasting today. The space is still student funded and student run today. So there's definitely power in that initial connection. But from there, moving on to, once we've graduated the school system and no longer have access to a student-funded and student-run space, we're still emerging entrepreneurs or young artists and people who don't necessarily fit into a typical 9 to 5 role or an office environment, or maybe we travel or have remote work or gig work. And we were really just trying to hold space for people who had sort of alternative needs or people who maybe weren't welcome elsewhere. And those spaces were supposed to just support the members. That's the only reason they existed. No profit, no end goal. It was just, I can't do this on my own, and I would like to do this in community with others, and I share the same needs. And I think that's something we forget when we look at the larger industry today. There wasn't an intentional building of the industry. It really grew out of this movement to really care for each other.
I have this that sort of sentiment there is, I love music, and I love reading about like the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s when what we now call house and club music took off. And like in London, there's behind King's Cross St Pancras Station, there's this very well done kind of redevelopment, but there used to be a nightclub called Bagley's, and it was sort of like an illegal rave, but everyone knew it was happening. And it was basically like pop-up nightclubs everywhere. And now all that's gone, and there's things like the Ministry of Sound, which came out of that movement, but it's Ministry of Sound's like this, huge industry now, and it has its own co-working spaces and everything like that. And everything's a bit organized and homogenized and stuff like that. But that kind of essence of people getting together and making it up as they go along is something. I think it must happen somewhere, but I think that seems to have gone. Do you agree, or am I just reminiscing and being an old man?
I think that because sometimes people's first introduction to co-working is mainstream co-working, or perhaps it's more commercial or real estate focused intention. Nothing against larger brands. There's large brands doing it really well. It's just about the intention. Why are we here? I think some people see that first when they hear about co-working, and they don't actually get to go deep enough to recognize that there are these indie or smaller operators who do stuff that's really special and fitting and tailored to the neighborhood or the potential members, that there are so many people operating with intention and holding space in such a good way. I fear that a lot of people sort of get turned off or turned away from sort of a cookie cutter experience that they might have. That's what I worry about. But I do think there's potential for us to have emerging movements, and we pushed this whole movement to work for us in the first place, and we adapted it through the pandemic, and it works for us today because we were driving the smaller spaces and pushing the larger ones to do better. And I think we will continue to do that. So absolutely, we can push for change with the vehicle of our co-working spaces, with our communities, virtual and in person, and with the things that matter to us. No one would have started a collaborative space if it didn't matter to them that their peers or friends or neighbors didn't have the resources they needed. I think as long as we care about our neighbors and our friends and our colleagues and our communities, then we're always going to have these incredible grassroots movements for change.
So with that word collaboration, because that's on my list of trigger words because people go like it's a collaborative environment, and I've been in lots of collaborative environments where where it blew up in my face. When you're trying to put together like a lot of the projects you worked on, like what is the upside and the downside of that collaborative environment? Because it sounds like a sort of Salesforce advert, but what is that?
Yeah, I think it's different for different organizations and spaces and cities as well. We're all at different points in this process. So I think a true sort of true collaboration is one that benefits both parties, right? So both people feel like this an experience or an idea that is better because we're doing this together, that there's more value for me by partnering on something or working towards a shared cause. And I think that a collaborative environment is really one that if you're sharing the values, you don't necessarily have to sit next to someone and talk to them all day and support their business and they support your business. And it's just the environment where, if you need something, you're encouraged to ask for support. And if someone needs something, you're encouraged to offer support and guidance. If you know it, have access to it. It's not something that's required of you to participate in a co-working community, but the more you do, the more you get out of it. And I think that the collaboration is reflected not only in the spaces between the members, it's a collaborative initiatives with the local community or small businesses that may exist around or near your space, the neighborhood that your space exists within, or the region or country. And then also the alliances and networks of spaces regionally through shared values, like, say, a Future of Work Alliance or the Future Leaders of Coworking, for example. So we're even seeing the evolution of these collaborations on that scale. So that's the kind of collaborative environment I think we all need in almost all ways. Every major problem we're about to face needs to be solved collectively.
I love the Futures Leaders of Co-working. It makes me feel in when I used to work in catering and hospitality, somewhere along the line, like people who were bartenders in cocktail bars started getting together and talking about how to do best practice and stuff like that. And it felt like being a wannabe Tom Cruise had evolved into a career rather than a part-time job. It was and the like Sam was on this a few episodes ago, but the definition that you can now have a career in co-working is sounds like obvious, but it's like really exciting that people are paying attention to the next evolution of it all. I want to go, without taking a breath, I want to go back because something I meant to ask just now is, you were talking about, like, collective power and organizing, and what, I'm sure you've got lots to pick from, but like, what is a project you've seen where that, like, collective energy and a group of people getting together has turned something around or saved a thing in your career?
Oh, there's so many examples, I think, from co-working when people are helping preserve and protect small businesses that matter to them in their communities or even within their co-working communities. But on a more general level, I think, like, in the work that I'm doing today, which sort of is a crossover from co-working into the work that I'll probably be doing more in the future, around community land trusts, and we'll talk about this again, but it's, again, based out this massive movement across Canada and around the world, based on very similar principles of, we see an issue, collectively it matters to us. We may have different ideas about how to solve it or how it happened or how to prevent it, but we know we need to do something about it, and we value the shared outcome. And I see this in community land trusts trying to preserve and protect neighborhoods and affordable housing, because they share the values of the people in their community. And watching folks come together and raise money and lock down a property for affordable housing for generations to come is a real actionable, measurable action that you can see. And I think that we have a lot to learn from other movements such as this about how our own movement began. And I'm starting to recognize similarities. I feel like I'm going through the process again, just in a new part of the systemic change that we need to make. And I think that kind of organizing and collective power is so impressive, because we're all just humans and we have family responsibilities and work and all kinds of things that we need to do daily to take care of ourselves. And these folks are deciding to volunteer a little bit of time and come together in meaningful ways to create massive generational change. And that's really exciting. We see this in co-working communities as well, and community hubs where folks are partnering with local government or all of the community residents to create centers that will end up having massive impact and generational change. And this is really what excites me about the movement, the way that co-working could fit into these other models in a really powerful sort of hub, and layering the co-working movement with some of these other movements is very exciting to me.
That is the most interesting area of the whole thing for me at the moment. And I've never seen like particularly local government. There's 32 boroughs in London, and some have been doing it. I mean, Islington is my go-to, and Lewisham is also really good at this. Have been embracing co-working for a very long time, but everyone's caught up. I think COVID accelerated that a lot, but the kind of somewhere between like the interest and the understanding of how integral a co-working space could be towards economic development, and even more important than that, I mean, money is really important, folks, but that community connection, that community meeting point is really interesting. And there's so many stories like someone we have Space 4 and Urban MBA and Kofi and Stephen and Facework, and there's a few more people on here, but it is a real gem of a place for community connection. What was that big place you worked on called Main? Is it Main 39?
312 Main.
312 Main. Like that is, I often have that and the Impact Hub Birmingham, and Indie Hall as well as a sort of like go-to. Here's what it could be. I'm forever sending people links to those websites and saying, look, this is what it could be like. Something I hear around a lot is people love talking about impact, and there's places like one of the people I'm going to single out here is Orospace, run by Vibhushan and Paul. Is ever since the beginning in 2020, they've like publicly shared how they're pushing back the revenue into very, very, very local projects. And there's other people who I'm sure the intention's there, but they're like, we make an impact, and impacts become like a marketing thing. And also it's like always has to be tied to some kind of monetary thing. But there's, like you say at the end of your post, there's a lot of things that you just, I'm going to say, put a price on just to get to the end of my sentence and hand it over to you.
I think, yeah, there are some very real questions. Even after 20 years in this movement, we're still asking questions about how to accurately measure the impact of the work that we're doing, especially collectively. And there are very real ways, like you're saying, monetary, that we can measure things: job creation, scaling companies, growing nonprofit organizations, revenue. And I think that's what's typically done in a business world, and not necessarily what our objectives are. I didn't start a co-working space because I wanted every single member to scale or sell their business or exit at a certain point. I wanted to support people in whatever their unique path and journey look like. And so what are we measuring then? So there's definitely economic impact of the infrastructure that we've built. But how do you measure the impact we've had on the mental health of our members over 20 years? How do we measure the value of the emotional labor that co-working founders and especially community managers and animators do, helping to dismantle loneliness and create these networks of support? So I'm really curious about like what metrics people actually use to measure the value of this ecosystem. And that's something that I think is a challenge, but that we could also get better at. We need to tell the stories of the impact on the members. We need to tell the stories of the impact of our co-working spaces in their communities, and the impact of our co-working alliances, creating programs like CoHIP and others that have existed for a long time just to support human beings. That's a lasting impact we should be measuring. And I don't have all the answers, even though I've been doing this a long time. I'm still very curious about how others measure the impact in their communities. All I can really use to measure, as I mentioned in the article, is sort of the scale of the waves that we make, because I believe that it takes a collective movement, it takes a community, it takes shared values and that coming together to actually make waves that are strong enough to change and shape the system. towards the goals that we may collectively have for better health and thriving and resilient communities.
Like looking, I mean, your post is this, but like looking back now, there's even more of making it up as we went along than it seemed to be at the time. Because I remember like standing in, I don't know why, I always remember Coworking Europe Dublin, and I think that was like a halfway point for me, which is why and it was the one that Hector came to. But there was this, people would, if we'd had this conversation then, oh, how do we measure value? People would have been like clawing for like, where's the framework for it? Who's got it? And it's kind of evolved. I think of Islington, who have been doing the affordable workplace scheme and measuring social value. And I linked to Natasha's podcast, which is about how they use a thing called the TOMS system. And the TOMS system, I think, has only been around like 15 years, and it's only now that it's worked out. The government, the local government, and the co-working spaces have worked out how to measure social value, and then you're going to have to, account to that to someone who's a bit more forensic with a spreadsheet than people like you and me. And it is really difficult. But I do think this has just popped in my head, so it hasn't really worked out. Is as we head to that world of basic income and wealth inequality, the how much are we going to get for this is a very, very different conversation. So how you measure value is moving even faster than this conversation here. I hate to say, does that make sense? Because it may not, but I've got to sense check it.
Yeah, of course. And I think too that like value in all kinds of ways, value to the member that's part of the community. Are there other models where we don't need to exchange that kind of membership fee to keep something sustainable and being a powerful force, holding space without the same sort of financial constraints or system that we work within now? And I see this because I experiment a lot with different models of co-working, nonprofit and various partnerships to share and co-locate. So I'm curious about the value to a city or the staff at a city if an organization or a volunteer organization or a for-profit business takes over some of this essential work. I mean, they have been tasked with taking care of the health of the residents of the city, and a co-working community can really support them in their mandate. Same with economic development offices. What's the value of 10 co-working communities within your district? What's the value of making sure that there's affordable space for them to exist where they need to be to support your residents? I think there's a lot of ways we can think about the value.
The whole, I mean, it almost sounds a bit cheesy, but the whole connection thing is so valuable. Like when, it's now about £300 is the average price of a desk in London, which in terms of, which seems like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. And that would be a lot of money for me. Like I'd rather sit at home than sit in a glass building in the middle of London nowadays. But but like being in that environment and all those people is still really valuable. And this is where that a whole affordable workspace thing comes into play, because what is affordable is, the word affordable is very different for a lot of people. Were you about to say something there?
Yeah. I think that the affordability is a key thing here. And this comes up a lot. I do a lot of social impact work and working with nonprofits, and co-working to everyone in those environments feels like a very corporate, for-profit approach. And I'm actually I'm bridging those two worlds with the work that I do very intentionally, because I feel like we have a lot to learn from each other in the same way that I did that with artists and entrepreneurs in the earliest days. But I think that the model doesn't necessarily have to stay the way it is today, especially as absolutely everything around us when it comes to work and life and collaboration in the next few years is going to change. We know for sure, especially with AI on the horizon and all kinds of political changes right now, things will not be the way they are today in a year or 2 or 5. And so we need to start thinking about models that work better for everyone. I know many of these spaces have creative models where they may have a corporate membership or options like using a platform like DeskPass, which would allow a company to pay for all of their employees to be in these spaces, so they're still having that experience without paying for their own membership as an employee. To have cities, for example, or economic development programs sponsor desks in spaces so that it's a continued, committed, paid membership that can be used by newcomers or new nonprofits or folks with disabilities or someone who perhaps doesn't have the financial ability to join the space but would really benefit from it. There are scholarship programs and all kinds of shared space models that don't operate in the traditional desk or membership model. So I would love to see more of that. I know a lot of spaces have a similar or perhaps even a very small program. Even one desk in each space is a lot of opportunity provided around the world.
And I've heard a lot of those things there. I've heard happen in London, and I'm sure they've always been there, but they pop up more in conversation and people announce them more at London Co-working Assembly events. So like like both Stephen and Kofi at Faceworks and Urban MBA, they've adapted their model so it's like very, very localized. So you probably wouldn't find their co-working space on Desk Pask or one of those things.
Right.
But if you're in the neighborhood, you'd go there, and it's very accurately priced for that audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that really goes back to the core values of the movement. And the language was sort of developed in collaboration maybe like 20 years ago, but the intention is still there. And I think we used to call it openness and accessibility in the sense of openness really in today's sort of the way we would say it would be inclusion, an open, welcome space where everyone belongs. And also openness is accessibility, and accessibility is not just physical accessibility, but financial accessibility. And so those have always been key values of the movement. And I hope that those continue to be front and center as we move forward.
What do you think the biggest, you sort of alluded to a few things here, but I want to pin you down to one. Like what's the biggest problem we need to solve for co-working in the next year or two?
I think we really need to refocus on the why. And for me, that's going back to the values and thinking about why we got started. That's different for many people and many communities. And that makes sense because different members and different communities have different needs. And we really need to just, I think, do sort of a gut check or like a review of our intentions and our actions. And are they aligned with why we started doing this in the first place? Are our membership models designed to serve the members first and foremost, or are they designed to create profit or for other reasons? And so I think that's a really important thing moving forward. And I think in doing so, many of us may shift ever so slightly, maybe somewhere significantly, towards programming that supports those values and needs, towards accessibility and scholarship programs or membership models that support those members and needs. And when we do that, that's when we start to get really creative. And that's where I get excited about the kinds of potential collaborations, bringing co-working spaces into all kinds of models, into nonprofit models, into government models, governance models, co-creation, co-design, co-everything. I think that we each have the capacity to take our spaces, our communities, and our values ahead into the future. And if we're leading with those, whatever we create is going to end up being awesome.
I'm with that. There's like every conversation I have nowadays is, it used to be like, here's how you open a co-working space, and that is not the same thing anymore. If you're like a brand doing the same thing all the time, yes, but if I feel like every conversation about how we're going to make this work is different. I don't suppose, Ashley, you got any events coming up you want to talk about?
You're so funny. I do. As with every year, the annual Coworking Canada conference is coming up. This will be our 11th annual, September 29th and 30th in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I think what's really special, I just want to call this out, it's called Coworking Canada. And again, if you're not familiar, you may think it's just a coworking conference and trade show. Really, we talk about all kinds of things. Coworking is just the term that brings us together in a collaborative way. We talk about creative and cultural spaces. We talk about social purpose real estate. We talk about placemaking and land trusts and communal care and economic development and systems change and the future of work and cooperative models and co-living and all kinds of elements of this larger conversation around work and life and the future of that, from the cultural to the technical to the operational. It's all there. And it's a collaborative experience. So if you would like to join us, we'd love to have you. Everyone around the world is welcome. It's not just for Canadians. We'll also have an online version 1 month later on October 29th. And we have a scholarship fund. So if the fees to participate are prohibitive, we'd love for you to apply for one and join us either in person in September or online in October. We want to hear from you. The attendees co-create content and lead conversations and discussions. So if there's anything that we've been talking about today or that's on your mind about the future of co-working, I think it would be a really great place to share your experience and your knowledge and to learn from others doing the same.
Delicious. And we will put a link in the show notes that I didn't know about the October bit. I knew that was coming around somewhere. Maybe we'll have to take this out, but is the Coworking Alliance conference coming back next year?
Yes, of course. We will be there as long as there are Coworking Alliances to collaborate with.
I should check these things before we record, but it's been a long, hard day here in Vigo. So we'll put a link to the Coworking Alliance Summit as well in that. And Ashley, best place to find you is LinkedIn?
Yeah, contact me on LinkedIn or at creativeblueprint.ca, where all the projects live.
Rocket, and we'll do that as well. And also, folks, we are very intentionally, if you listen to this all the time, we're always trying to kick life into that LinkedIn group. And we, Fanny and Suzanne and Mark Navarro and myself, we post our podcast in there, and we encourage our audience to go back in there and chat about things. So if you've heard, ideally you'd all sit down with the LinkedIn group open and drop comments under the post and say how you're enjoying it as we go. But that's in my little Bernie universe. But that's a really good place to connect. If you are going to any of the conferences that happen around the world or running events, put it in that LinkedIn group, because we want to, I think, like now more than ever, we need to show how we're doing things, how we can keep society going, and how we can connect and move to that citizenship ideal that we all crave for. And all the links are in the show notes. And wherever you are in the world, be careful out there. It is a jungle.